Basement of La Penta, it's WICR.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. I'm your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino, and just smile, Giants fans, because that is exactly what Coach Coughlin wants you to do after the Giants picked up their first win of the season last night, defeating the Washington Redskins 32-21. And look, there are still some problems that need to be addressed. I think overall, for the most part, it's still the finish of the game is not where it needs to be. You look at that game last night, how Washington scored those points at the end of the game. I was actually covering the game, for most people probably know, for ESPN Radio 104.5 The Team, the reporter for them, so I had to go down and get set up in the press conference, so I watched the end of the game waiting for Coach Coughlin to come in. So, I mean, clearly there are still some problems with the finish. I talked to John Beeson in the locker room, and that was basically his point. Look, we still need to finish better. And it wasn't just Beeson, it was a lot of people. A resounding answer to that question. We do still need to finish better. How do they finish better? Well, I think clearly getting the W is the biggest step, and then you just have to continue to build on from here. But when you look at this win that they got over the Redskins, there are a lot of places that you could go. And I think the first one you have to go to is obviously the big glaring one in the turnovers. Securing the turnovers and securing those turnovers early set the right tone for that game. Prince Amukamara talked to him in the locker room after the game. He was asked about how important his interception was to the overall tone of that game. And, I mean, he agreed, but he also gave credit because before him, Rashad Jennings did have the punt blocked, and it went out of the end zone, which was able to get them the safety. Then Prince Amukamara gets his interception, which set up a touchdown by the Giants offense. So those two plays right there set up the entire game for the Giants. Getting them early set the undeniable edge that they needed to stay sharp in that game. Now, again, the finish isn't great, but you hold on for the win, and I think with a team like this at this point where it was a little bit fragile with the start that they had, they really could have been 3-0 at this point. You'll take it and you'll build on from and learn how do we finish better, because I think right now on the big on Coach Coughlin's big chalkboard, that is key point number one. How do we finish better? And this is clearly one of the steps that you want to go in trying to finish better. But clearly the turnovers. I mean, I remember it was one of those moments where in Coach Coughlin's press conference for the game against Atlanta when they lost, and one of his points that really stuck out to me the most was he just said right out without a glare, the basic reason we lost this game is because we didn't get any turnovers and we gave up a turnover. Complete opposite in this one. You got the turnovers, 3 of them. You got 2 of them in the early phases of the game. And again, I think for a team like this who's struggling to get pressure on the quarterback, even last night, only 1 sack, 0 sacks in their first game against Dallas, 2 against Atlanta, 1 against Washington. Even without that lack of pressure, you look at the Dallas game and you look at the Washington game, able to come down with turnovers. In that Atlanta game, they were not, and they did lose. But I think you look at this and you just think, well, is the pressure going to get better? And I think that's something that could get better, but they're still finding ways to get turnovers and getting them early in phases. Even we saw at the end of the game when Washington was going in and the ball was stripped out and it went and it didn't go in. I think that, again, is another one of those heads-up plays. Unga we saw with the second interception. Heads-up play by him. Guys being in the right places at the right times. And that was clearly it with Prince's first interception. He said it. Coach Coughlin said it. That was one of those things where he just had instant recognition. He jumped the play. That's film study. That's putting in the work, doing all of the right things. Right there, that set that tone for that game. Clearly, Rashad Jennings, his punt block was key. That was phase number 1. And then phase number 2 was Prince Amukamara coming down with his interception. But at this point, again, talking to a lot of the players in the locker room, it's all focus is on Buffalo now, going on the road and building from this. Because look, if the Giants started 0-3, we would be talking about much different things this morning than what we are right now. But you still got to think, based on the way that the NFC East is playing out, that now the Giants have kind of the wake up that they need. Because I still don't think a lot of people have faith in the Eagles based on what we've seen so far. DeMarco Murray has just been a catastrophe so far. His status is still not 100% for Sunday as of right now, and the Eagles just look like they just don't have it figured out at the moment. The Cowboys have a lot of uncertainty. They're missing their two most important players, Tony Romo and Dez Bryant. Can Brandon Weeden step in behind that great offensive line? I don't think it helps that he doesn't have a steady running game behind him. If DeMarco Murray was still there, that would be a tremendous help to him. But you just can't replace the production of a Tony Romo and a Dez Bryant for him. Then you go to the Redskins, and clearly the Giants beat the Redskins. Probably the team with the most concerns and the biggest glaring red hole at quarterback in the entire division. So you look at the Giants at 1-2, the Cowboys at 2-0, the Eagles at 0-2, and then the Redskins now, who stand at 1-2. The Giants are not in the worst position. They have a game on the road against Buffalo, which will be difficult because that is always a difficult place to play. Then you come back home for the 49ers. But, I mean, this is it. I always say in sports, once you show it, you have to just keep on moving. You can't go backwards. And that's exactly the point here with the Giants. There's no going backwards from here. There's still things you need to take care of, which is understandable. I mean, after week 3, that's when I think we really start to see teams hit their groove and really show us who they are. So the Giants still have a lot of work to do, but they're in a position where, because of the weakness of their division and a couple of other things, I think that they can continue to build on from here. And when you have guys like Odell Beckham Jr. and Eli Manning playing the way that they are with the connection that they have, that clearly is huge. And Odell had a monster game, as he always does. I mean, I don't think that there's any doubt how good this guy is. I mean, you just look at the jaw-dropping plays that he makes. And one of my biggest takeaways from the Atlanta game was, who's the third down guy for the Giants? Who's going to emerge as the third down guy? Throughout Eli Manning's career, and it's true for any quarterback. I mean, Tony Romo's got his Jason Witten. Aaron Rodgers has got Jordy Nelson. Quarterbacks love to have that go-to guy on third down where you need to trust to put the ball in somebody's hands. You're giving it to your guy. Now, Eli has had that connection with people throughout his career, but I've always felt like he's been a quarterback who's been more willing to spread the ball on third down than some other ones. Most quarterbacks will go to their most trusted player on those third downs. Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, all the other ones I just said. Eli has been a little bit more willing to spread the football, but I think we saw it in the Dallas game, go into Preston Parker, who's no longer on the team, too many times. He went to Odell Beckham Jr. at the end of the game as well. You have to put the ball in the hands of your best, most talented players. The Giants are in a position where they have a lot of them. Ruben Randle had a tremendous game, and Odell Beckham Jr., and that's not even taking into account that Victor Cruz has not taken the football field so far this season. So you look at things the way that they're shaping up, the offensive talent that they have, and aside from some late game decision making from Eli, I think he's actually played pretty well so far. I think everything we heard about him in the offseason, how he was working with baseball coaches and working on his feet because the feet is such a critical aspect of the West Coast offense, trying to run that. I think all of the things that Eli has done, we're starting to kind of see. He's definitely playing faster. I think he's playing with more speed and control over the line than we've seen at a point in his career. But we look at things right now, and again, big emphasis, like Coach Coughlin said, smile, we won, but at the same time, the finish of the game still has to be better. I mean, I kind of go back to my notes after the loss to Atlanta, and the biggest quote from Coach Coughlin that stuck out to me was, the competitive nature and finish of the game has to be better. The competitive nature of the game, I'm not sure about that, but the finish still absolutely has to be better. And you could just kind of tell. I mean, after the Atlanta game, even if I compare both times talking to Ruben Randle, the first game where I talked to him after Atlanta, just as down as you could be. In the second one, spirits lifted, and one of the interesting comments that I remember from someone who was asking John Beeson was about, well, look, Coach Coughlin said, it's kind of disappointing because you don't feel like the players are getting what they deserve for all the work that they put in. And I don't think there's any team in the National Football League who's not putting in a tremendous amount of work. But when you're putting in those extremely grueling, long hours, day after day, week after week, it's difficult, extraordinarily difficult, when you're not coming away with wins, especially when you're holding on to these leads in the fourth quarter, which I think is what frustrates fans more than anything for the Giants. Is they reasonably, and they very well should be 3-0 right now, but they are not. They are 1-2. There are good things to look at. There are bad things to look at. But like Coach Coughlin said, and I said it at the top, I'll say it at the end when we break down the segment, just smile, we won. They move on to Buffalo. They're 1-2. There are good things. There are bad things. But that's it for this segment. We will be back in a minute.